I still remember the smell of motor oil and rain that morning, the kind that sticks to your clothes and your thoughts. The garage was half lit, the metal shutters pulled halfway down because the power had flickered again. I was wiping down the counter, pretending to look busy when she walked in. Not in a rush, not lost, just there, like she'd been here before and decided to give it another try. Her car had stalled outside, some foreign make that looked expensive but tired. She wasn't one of those customers who start talking before the door even shuts. She just looked at me, eyes steady, as if she was trying to measure how much I'd understand without her having to say it. "Battery's dead," she finally said, voice low even. "Or maybe I am. You'll find out." I smiled, unsure if it was a joke. She didn't. When I opened the hood, she stood a few feet away, arms folded, the faintest trace of perfume fighting the smell of rust and oil. It wasn't a sweet scent, something darker, sharper, like cedar and rain. She wasn't dressed to impress. Just jeans, a black blouse, sleeves rolled up like someone who didn't care to be looked at, which only made me look more. She caught me once, or maybe twice. "Careful," she said quietly, almost teasing, almost not. "These engines bite." I could have sworn she meant something else. There was an awkward pause, the kind that doesn't feel empty, just overfilled. She stood there, half in the shadow, half in the pale light from the open door, and I felt my mouth go dry for no reason I could name. I asked her how long the car had been giving trouble, and she said, "Long enough for me to stop caring." Then she added, softer, "But not long enough to let it die." I didn't know if she was still talking about the car. Every word she said had layers, like she was peeling something invisible, testing if I'd notice. I didn't answer right away, afraid I'd sound too young, too obvious. So I just worked in silence, pretending to be focused while my mind was already circling her tone, her restraint, the way her thumb brushed the edge of her keychain over and over like a nervous habit. When I told her it would take a few minutes to charge the battery, she nodded and leaned against the wall, arms still crossed, watching the rain hit the street outside. "You like fixing things?" she asked after a while. "I guess," I said. "Things that can be fixed." She hummed, not approval, not disagreement. Just that quiet sound adults make when they've seen too much to believe simple answers. The silence after that wasn't awkward anymore. It felt like a truce. And then, maybe it was nothing, maybe it was everything. She reached for the wrench I'd dropped. Our fingers almost touched, and she said, "Don't come closer." She said it softly, not as a warning, but like someone who's already closer than they meant to be. I froze. The sound of rain outside filled the space between us. I could have stepped back. I should have. Instead, I said the first thing that came out before I could stop it. "Then pull me back," I murmured, "if I crossed the line." She didn't move, just looked at me, not surprised, not angry. More like she was remembering something she'd promised herself a long time ago. Then she smiled, just barely. "You don't know what that means," she said. Maybe I didn't. But all day, I couldn't shake the image, her standing in that dim garage, the smell of rain and steel around us. A spark of something unspoken burning quietly between two people who should have been strangers. And somehow, I already knew this wasn't the last time she'd walk in. The second time she came in, it was late, too late for anyone to be looking for repairs. The shop lights hummed, casting long shadows over the floor. I was closing up when I heard her knock, 2 quick taps against the metal frame. "I know you're done for the day," she said, leaning against the door. "But it's making that sound again." Her tone carried a quiet apology, but her eyes didn't. She looked composed, deliberate, the way people do when they're trying not to ask for help but end up doing it anyway. I told her I could take a look, even though I didn't need to. She could have come tomorrow. She could have called anyone. But she came here. She watched me work, standing just far enough away to pretend she wasn't. The air between us felt thick, not uncomfortable, just aware. The radio played something old and slow in the background, a melody that didn't fill the silence, only deepened it. Her hands were clasped around a paper cup of coffee, not from a cafe, from the vending machine outside. I could tell by the cheap plastic lid and the way her fingers pressed it like she was trying to warm herself. "You don't sleep much, do you?" I asked without thinking. She smiled faintly. You sound like someone's mother." I almost laughed, but she looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from holding herself together too long. When I reached under the hood again, she crouched beside me. I caught the faint sound of her breath, steady, measured, like she was counting seconds just to keep from saying something real. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked suddenly. I glanced at her, confused. "The shop?" She shrugged. "The noise, the routine, the people who only half listen when you talk." "Sometimes," I admitted. "You?" Her silence said enough. She brushed her hair back, a few silver strands catching the light. I noticed how her nails were short, unpainted, but her hands were elegant, the kind that used to hold something softer than car keys. I wondered what kind of life left that mix of grace and weariness behind. "You're staring," she said without looking up. I swallowed. "Just thinking." "Don't," she whispered. "It makes things heavier." Something in her voice cracked. Barely, but I heard it. The kind of small break you only notice when you're paying too much attention. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached for the rag beside me, brushing against my wrist by accident. Or maybe not. Her touch was quick, almost nervous, but it left something behind. A pulse, a question. "You fixed it," she said, standing too fast, like she needed distance again. "Yeah," I murmured. "Guess I did." She looked toward the door, but didn't leave right away. Her reflection wavered faintly in the glass, a ghost of calm, hiding everything else. Then she turned, voice low enough to make me doubt I'd heard it right. "Next time," she said, "don't make it so easy for me to come back." I didn't answer, just watched her walk out into the night, coffee cup still in her hand, and the quiet ache of something unsaid filling the space she left behind. It was raining hard enough to drown out the city. The kind of rain that makes every sound smaller, except the heartbeat you don't want to hear. She'd called earlier, said her car wouldn't start again. By the time I reached her building, she was already outside, umbrella half open, shoes soaked. "You didn't have to come," she said, but didn't step back. "You called," I answered. She almost smiled, almost. Then she turned toward the dim light spilling from her apartment window. "You might as well come in. It's too wet to fix anything out here." Her place was quiet, minimalist, a little too clean. The air smelled faintly of old books and lemon polish. A single mug sat on the counter, next to a half-read novel. Everything about her space looked temporary, like she was always ready to leave. I left my jacket by the door, trying not to drip too much on the floor. She handed me a towel, avoiding my eyes. "Thanks," I said. "Don't thank me," she replied. "It's not kindness, just habit." There was a small table near the window. She motioned for me to sit, then poured tea into two mismatched cups. The sound of rain softened against the glass, blurring the edges of everything. Her voice, her face, the sense of time passing. We talked, but not about anything that mattered. The kind of talk people use when they're trying not to touch a bruise. I asked how long she'd lived here. She said, "Long enough to know I should have moved." There was a small pause, the kind that changes the air. I wanted to ask why. I didn't. Instead, she asked, "Do you ever wish you could stop caring so much about people who won't let you?" Her voice was quiet, but not fragile, like she'd been saving that sentence for months. I looked at her, really looked this time. The soft crease under her eyes, the smudge of tea on her thumb, the way her shoulders tightened after she spoke. I wanted to tell her I knew what that felt like, that she wasn't the only one who carried something that wouldn't die quietly. But before I could, her phone rang. A name flashed across the screen, Mark. She froze. The phone rang again. She let it. "Someone important?" I asked, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. "Someone who used to be." She silenced it, then added, "You should probably get going soon. It's late." But she didn't move. Neither did I. Lightning flashed outside, pale light crawling across her face. She was standing close now. Too close, her hand brushing against the table, inches from mine. I could see the small scar on her wrist, the tremor in her fingers as she reached for her cup. "Don't look at me like that," she said softly. "How am I looking? Like you know something I've tried to forget." Her words hung there, trembling between us, and I almost said it, almost told her she wasn't alone in that ache. But instead, I just nodded, finished my tea, and stood. At the door, I felt her eyes on my back. And when I turned, just once, she was still there, one hand resting on the table, lips parted like she might call me back. She didn't. Neither did I. But that night, I couldn't stop replaying the way her fingers had almost touched mine. The moment that could have changed everything, if either of us had let it. It was past closing when she came again. No call this time. Just the sound of her heels on the wet concrete, soft but certain. The shop was dim, just the desk lamp on, its light spilling over invoices and half-finished work. I didn't look up right away. Maybe I was afraid to. "You don't lock the doors anymore," she said from behind me. "I thought you weren't coming back." I thought so too. I turned then. She was standing in the doorway, damp from the rain, hair loose for once. No perfume tonight, just the scent of water and cold air. Something about that made her look younger, or maybe just less defended. "You shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "I know." The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was thin, fragile, like glass ready to break under one more word. She moved closer, slow enough for me to notice every hesitation. Her eyes flicked to the chair across from mine, but she didn't sit. Instead, she leaned against the counter, arms folded, the same guarded stance she always took when she wanted to feel in control. "What are we doing?" she asked finally. No anger in her voice, just fatigue. The kind that comes from holding something invisible between two people for too long. "I don't know," I said. "You tell me." She laughed once, quiet, without humor. "You think I have any idea? You're half my age. You don't carry the kind of ghosts I do." "Maybe not," I said, "but I see them." That made her look up. For the first time, she didn't look composed. She looked lost, almost afraid of being understood. "You shouldn't see me like this," she whispered. "I don't think I know any other way." The words came out before I could stop them, and they just hung there, raw and clumsy. She blinked, eyes glossy but not wet. She stepped back a little, shaking her head. "This isn't supposed to happen. I come here because it's easy. Because you don't ask questions. You fix things." "I don't fix people," I said. "You just make me want to try." Her breath caught. A single second stretched too long between us. The ticking of the wall clock grew unbearable. Then she said, very quietly, "You're making it hard for me to keep pretending this doesn't mean anything." I wanted to reach out, not to touch her, but just to make her stay in that truth for a heartbeat longer. But she turned away, staring at the rain outside the glass. "This isn't a movie," she said. "There's no safe way out of this. I'm not asking for safe." She looked at me then, really looked. The kind of look that strips both people bare. And then, after what felt like a lifetime, she whispered, almost to herself, "I don't even know if I'm lonely or if I just miss being seen." That was the last thing she said before walking out, leaving me with the echo of her voice and the terrifying realization that I felt the same. It was a Tuesday, ordinary in every way until she walked in carrying a box. Cardboard, taped twice across the top, her hands steady but pale around the edges. I was changing a tire, music low, air thick with the smell of rubber and rain again. She didn't say hello this time. Just set the box on the counter like she was delivering something she shouldn't have kept. "I found this in my trunk," she said quietly. "Didn't know where else to take it." I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at it. "What is it?" "Junk," she said too quickly. "Old papers, photos. Nothing you need to see." But she didn't leave. She just stood there, watching the box like it might start speaking. I could tell, whatever was in there wasn't junk. It was something that had been following her for a while. "You can use my desk," I offered gently. She hesitated, then nodded. As she opened the flaps, a faint smell of dust and perfume rose. Old life sealed inside cardboard. She pulled out a stack of envelopes tied with faded blue ribbon, her fingers tracing the edges like muscle memory. "Letters," she said. "From before." "Before what?" She didn't answer. Just slid one free, the corner bent, the handwriting almost beautiful. She stared at it for a long time, then handed it to me, not to read, just to hold. "It's strange," she murmured. "How paper can survive longer than people." I turned it over in my hands, feeling the faint indentation of pen strokes. The name on the envelope wasn't mine, of course. It was a man's name, Daniel. He died. I asked softly. Not exactly. Her voice caught. He just stopped being someone I could reach. I didn't ask more. I didn't have to. The way she looked at that letter, it was love or grief or both pretending to be each other. She leaned on the counter, shoulders slumped. You remind me of him sometimes, she said. Not the way you talk, the way you wait. He used to wait too, even when there was nothing left to wait for. My throat tightened. I'm not him. I know, she whispered. That's what makes it worse. The rain started again, harder this time, filling the silence neither of us wanted to break. She sat down then, suddenly small against the cold metal stool. I saw her hands trembling just slightly, her eyes darting toward the letters as if they might accuse her of something. I kept thinking, she said after a long pause, if I let someone close again, I'd lose the last piece of what I had with him. Like grief needs to be guarded. I didn't touch her, didn't speak. Just waited, the way I always did. When she finally met my eyes, there was no wall left. Only exhaustion, and the faintest relief of someone who'd been seen too clearly to keep pretending. Maybe, she said, her voice barely holding. I keep coming here because I wanted to know if I could care again, without it killing me this time. She looked down, then smiled, faint and broken. And for the first time, she didn't leave right away. She stayed, sitting in the half-light, breathing, unguarded, while the letters waited quietly between us, witnesses to something shifting, quietly, forever. It happened without a plan, the kind of evening that just unfolded, slow and inevitable. The shop was closed, but she was there anyway, sitting on the floor beside the workbench with her back against the wall. She'd brought coffee this time, 2 cups, both already cooling. I didn't know where else to go, she said simply. No apology, no reason. Just the truth, stripped bare. I sat down across from her, cross-legged on the concrete. The radio was off, the only sound the faint hum of the rain outside. For a long time, we didn't talk. We just sat there, 2 people pretending they still had choices left. She broke the silence first. Do you ever wish you could rewind time? Not to change anything, just to stand there again, before everything tilted. Every day, I said. She smiled faintly. Then maybe we're both stuck in the same place. Her voice was quieter tonight, softer around the edges. The tiredness in her eyes wasn't guarded anymore. It was real, human. She set her coffee aside and rubbed her hands together. I noticed how small they looked against the light, the way her thumb brushed her knuckles, the same nervous gesture she always did when she was thinking too hard. Sometimes, she said, I think I started coming here just to prove to myself I could stop, that I could still walk away from something before it mattered. And now? I asked. Her eyes flicked to mine. Now I'm not sure I want to. The words landed softly, but they carried everything we'd both been avoiding. I didn't move. I didn't reach for her. I just let them hang there, because they deserved space to breathe. She shifted slightly, drawing her knees up, her shoulder brushing against the cabinet behind her. You scare me, she said. Not because of what you might do, because of what I might let happen. I exhaled slowly. You think I don't feel the same? Something fragile passed between us. Recognition, maybe, or surrender. The air felt warmer somehow, or maybe it was just the nearness. I reached out, resting my hand on the floor beside hers. Not touching, just close enough for the distance to mean something. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, gently, she let her fingers slide toward mine until they brushed, barely, like testing the edge of something that couldn't be undone. That was all. No kiss, no confession, just the quiet acknowledgement that whatever this was, it had already happened, somewhere between her first visit and this one. She leaned her head back against the wall, eyes half closed. You'll forget me someday, she murmured. Maybe, I said, but not tonight. A small, tired laugh escaped her, the kind that comes after crying, though she hadn't. Then she leaned slightly sideways until her shoulder rested against mine. Neither of us spoke again. We just sat there, sharing silence like it was the only language that hadn't betrayed us yet. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. The lights flickered once, then steadied. And in that stillness, the smell of oil, the taste of cold coffee, her weight just barely against me. Everything that needed to be said had already been understood. It's been months since that night. The one that didn't end or begin anything, just shifted something too deep to name. The shop feels quieter now. Not emptier, just slower. The kind of quiet that stays after a song fades. She doesn't come by much anymore. Sometimes she drops off her car for service and leaves a note on the seat instead of waiting. Just small things. Thanks for the tune-up, or don't forget to eat lunch for once. Little pieces of care folded between lines that never say too much. I keep the notes. Not because I'm waiting for her, but because they remind me of something I didn't know I needed. That it's possible to be changed by someone without owning them, without even holding them. The truth is, what happened between us wasn't some grand story. There was no confession, no ending that tied everything neat. What we had was quieter, two lives brushing edges for a little while, both learning how to breathe differently afterward. I used to think love was about pursuit, about saying everything before it's too late. But now I think sometimes it's about pausing, about standing close enough to see someone clearly and far enough to let them stay who they are. I saw her last week, actually, at the grocery store, of all places. She was standing in the produce aisle, holding a basket, laughing with someone I didn't know. She looked lighter, not in the way that means she's forgotten, but like she's finally resting inside herself again. She saw me too. For a second, our eyes met over a shelf of oranges, and there it was, that quiet recognition, that unspoken thank you we never got to say out loud. No words, just a small nod, a faint smile, and then she turned back, her laugh melting into the noise of everyday life. I walked away before the moment could break. Back at the shop later that day, I found the wrench she'd once handed me, the one that started all this. I kept it aside, not as a memory, but as a reminder that some people don't come to stay. They come to unravel something you didn't know was tangled. And maybe that's enough. Because I don't wait for her anymore. I just work, breathe, exist, a little more awake than before. Some nights, though, when the air smells like rain and the light hits the walls the same way, I still hear her voice, calm, teasing, saying, "Don't come closer." And somewhere in the back of my mind, I still whisper back, "Then pull me back if I cross the line." Only now, I understand what that meant. It wasn't a warning. It was a way of saying, let's not ruin what's real by trying to name it. If you've ever had someone like that, someone who changed you quietly, without staying, tell me in the comments what you learned from them. Because sometimes, the ones who leave gently teach us how to stay with ourselves.